Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission, as always, is to dive into the sources you send us and make sense of them. But today, today you've really given us something. This isn't just dense academic work, it feels like a deliberate attempt not to be understood, a masterclass in aggressive obfuscation.
Oh, absolutely. What we're looking at here is this philosophical feud, right? And it's conducted almost entirely in made-up words, jargon, these really aggressive neologisms.
Yeah.
The field itself is called Gongoricalubrications.
Gongoricalubrications. Even the name is a lot.
It is. And the core text, Professor Bunderbrook's original paper and then Professor Moolsworth's rebuttal, honestly, they read less like philosophy papers and more like, I don't know, competitive poetry written in a language nobody speaks anymore. It's vituperative.
Okay, so our goal today. First, we absolutely have to unpack this style. Like, what is this extreme verbosity? How do we decode it?
Right.
Second, we need to understand the actual argument underneath it all. The sophisticated disagreement between Professor Herky Bunderbrook, he's the sarcophagist, and Professor Cornelius Moolsworth, the ratiocinator.
And they're apparently arguing over the definition of knowing nothing, which, on the surface, sounds absurdly simple.
It does, doesn't it? But the way they approach it is anything but simple.
But then there's the third part, and this is where it gets juicy, I think. We're going to reveal the truth behind all this intellectual flexing, which turns out to be, well, stunningly simple, gossipy even, very human.
Exactly. So the sources we have are Bunderbrook's foundational paper, Gongoricalubrications, then Moolsworth's direct, angry rebuttal, Obnubile aggregationisms.
Obnubile aggregationisms. Seriously.
Seriously. And then there's this crucial third source. We're kind of calling it the documentary.
The documentary, okay.
Yeah, because it's the key, really. It connects these incredibly high-level concepts they throw around, things like magnetoresistance and ultrasolipsometry.
Yeah.
Connects them to much more basic stuff, like, human ego, financial disaster. Okay, so the core mystery is just why? Why would two respected professors at Mukopolis University pour so much energy into creating this ridiculously complex, deliberately unclear style just to argue about ignorance? It feels way over the top.
It absolutely does. The effort involved seems completely out of proportion to the question itself.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We have to start with the style itself, right? Understand the weapon before we analyze the fight. All right, part one. Let's try to dissect this mountain of jargon. What is Gongoricalubrications? Our first source says it's a modern neotenic version of culturanismo.
Right. Culturanismo, for anyone who hasn't run into it, is basically this historical Spanish literary style known for being deliberately complex. Lots of metaphors, obscure allusions, complicated syntax, intellectual showing off, basically.
So Gongoricalubrications is like culturanismo 2.0, but angrier.
Exactly. More aggressive. The source defines it, and this is a direct quote, as the deliberate exasperationalist practice of rendering text turgid through superfluous verbose and aggressive neologism.
Exasperationalist. Wow.
Yeah. The key phrase, though, is its goal. Unennoblable semantic obfuscation.
Okay, break that down. Unennoblable semantic obfuscation. Sounds like something they'd write.
It totally does. Unennoblable means impossible to make clear, impossible to uncloud. Semantic means related to meaning, and obfuscation is, making something obscure or unclear.
So, making the meaning impossible to clarify. Deliberate.
Precisely. They're not trying to communicate an idea clearly. They're trying to build a linguistic fortress around it, make it impenetrable.
Why on earth?
Well, Bunderbrook argues the style functions as a rheostatic mechanism.
A what now?
A rheostat. Like a dimmer switch for electricity controls the flow. So Bunderbrook is saying his writing style controls the flow of meaning by deliberately slowing it down, ensuring its perendinational delay.
Perendinational delay, constant postponement.
Exactly, a constant deferral of clarity. The idea, I guess, is that the longer it takes you, the reader, to figure it out, the more important or profound it must seem. It's manufactured significance through difficulty.
So communication, or conmukication, as they might say at Mukopolis U, isn't about efficiently transferring information. It's about glorifying the most difficult, roundabout, dyspepsis circuitous path possible.
You got it. Glorification of the circuitous path.
But it's not just random complexity. It's built using a specific method. The mechanism of multiplicability.
Okay, a mechanism.
Yeah.
That implies structure.
Yes, very calculated. It's designed to create what they call high-density lexical interconlacutionality.
Interconlacutionality. Lack of connection.
Essentially, yes, a maximum lack of connection between the dense words. It achieves this by mashing together three very different types of language, 3 lexical registers.
Okay, let's break down these 3 registers. This is the recipe for the headache, or what's the first
The
one?
first is ab initio gravitas. This is all about establishing a kind of baseline seriousness. It involves dropping in terms that sound authoritative but might be, specious.
Right. Think obscure legal terms pulled out of context, like amicus curiae or inter vivos, or maybe concepts from like old hydrogeology texts, even archaic insults like dandy prat.
Dandy prat. What's a dandy prat?
It means like an insignificant or worthless person.
Yeah.
But using it makes the text feel grounded in some kind of faux traditional academic weight.
Okay, so register 1 is fake old school authority. What's register 2?
Register 2 immediately clashes with that. It's called temporal advancement. This is where they inject high-level modern scientific and technical terms.
Okay. So throwing in words
Like tomography, spectrophotometer, maybe magnetoresistance from quantum physics, stuff that sounds cutting-edge, rigorous, makes the argument seem scientifically grounded, even if the terms are used completely out of context. You'd need like 3 different PhDs to even spot the misuse.
Got it. So old fake authority plus modern baffling science. What's the third ingredient?
The third register is the kill shot, the Mucopian canon. This is where the aggressive neologisms really come in. These are words intentionally made up, studied under something called kitschology at Mucopolis.
Kitschology, the study of kitsch.
Apparently. And these words are designed to sound simultaneously ancient, obscure, and pugnalicious.
Pugnalicious, like stabby, aggressively hostile.
Pretty much. Think of words like epigraptomancy or interminagarchy. These are custom-built confusion bombs designed to just obliterate any lingering thread of meaning that might have survived the first 2 registers.
Okay, let's try an example. Bunderbrook apparently used the example of a turducken.
Yeah,
the turducken. Turkey, duck, chicken, all nested. So you can't just say a large stuffed bird. That's far too clear.
So how would you Gongoricalubricate a turducken?
Okay, applying the mechanism, you might get something like the inter vivos, register 1, archaic legal concatenation of the gallinaceous matrix necessitates a paradigm of non-Euclidean tomography, register 2 science, indicative of advanced epigrastomancy, register 3, Mucopian canon. Right. Every word is sort of understandable on its own, but the sentence itself is just noise, meaningless noise.
Exactly. It's what Bunderbrook calls a pseudo-paradoxicalism. The apparent clarity of the individual words just makes the overall lack of meaning even more baffling. Perfect clarity on the parts, zero clarity on the whole.
And there's a rule enforcing this.
The canonical imperative. This rule says everything. No matter how simple or mundane he mentions a cow, the turducken, even iguanas must be described using the same incredibly complex structure, the same diakisododecahedral lens.
Diakisododecahedral, that's a shape, right? A complex geometric form.
A very complex one. The point is you apply the same dense, rigid linguistic structure to describing a cow as you would to describing, say, a quantum cryocooler or an electron.
Okay, hold on. I have to push back here. This sounds insane. Forcing complex language onto simple things, this analogibetic compression generating to sophisticated semantic pressure. Isn't that just deliberately terrible writing? Is there any actual academic point here, or is it just showing off to keep people out?
Well, Bunderbrook's defense would be something like, the act of compression is the point. The fact that the linguistic structure can be forced onto anything, from a cow to a cryocooler, supposedly proves the structure's superiority over the subject matter. The language itself becomes the focus, not what it describes. It's about the performance of intellectuality.
I see. Maybe. So the end product is this document that feels totally disconnected into conlacutionality, but looks incredibly wise. It has this aesthetic of metasentia.
Precisely. It appears profound. And Bunderbrook insists the real message, the signal, isn't in any clear meaning, but resides in the noise. The value is in the obnudal gregatious quality itself, that confusing, aggregated complexity.
So the struggle to understand is the point. The mental workout forces you to a higher level of thought, even if you eventually realize the thing you were analyzing was empty.
That seems to be his argument.
Yeah.
The difficulty itself is the prompt for a superior discourse. The lack of substance proves the prohitherness of pseudologic, which is the ultimate expression of omnilargentiousness, whatever those mean.
Right. Prohitherness, omnilargentiousness. Okay. It's a defense, I suppose, a very, very elaborate one, exhausting even. Okay, so the style is this dense, aggressive, linguistic weapon designed to, well, maybe impress, maybe obscure, maybe just exhaust the reader. But what was it aimed at? That brings us to part 2, the actual fight, the philosophical battle between Bunderbrook and Molesworth. What did Bunderbrook claim all this noise prove?
Right. After pages and pages of this stylistic torture, Bunderbrook's original paper, Gongoricalubrications, reaches a conclusion that is, surprisingly, quite simple. He calls it terminal nescience.
Terminal nescience, okay? Nescience means ignorance, lack of knowledge.
Exactly. So Bunderbrook argues that after you subject all philosophy, ontology, the nature of being, teleology, purpose, all of it to his Gongoricalubrication system, the process reveals one ultimate, undeniable, irrefragably useful truth.
Which is?
The inevitability of nescience, basically. We demonstrably know nothing, full stop. Game over for philosophy.
Wow. So all that work, all those made-up words just to land on we know nothing, that's his definitive philosophical closure.
That's his claim. He sees the whole complex process as a kind of a telepagrammic transmission, like a super dense message composed of tosticated trivialities, complexly expressed simple things that just constantly, relentlessly proves the ultimate pointlessness, the prohitherness of trying to build logical systems of knowledge. He thinks he's reached the end.
It's almost appealing in a bleak way. Build the ultimate intellectual machine only to have it definitively tell you that all searching is futile. There's a certain finality to it.
It is tempting, isn't it? Which is probably why Professor Molesworth finds it so utterly, completely maddening.
Molesworth, the ratiocinator, he wasn't buying it.
Not for a second. His rebuttal, obnubial aggregationisms, just vituperatively refutes this simple, singular truth of non-knowledge. He calls it an inanity of the highest order, a conceptual retreat. Cowardice, basically.
Okay, but why? What's Molesworth's actual logical objection? Because his writing is just as dense, right?
It is. But his core point is actually quite sharp, buried under all the jargon. Molesworth's fundamental problem is this. Bunderbrook created a system specifically designed to dismantle certainty, to show the flaws in all claims to knowledge.
Right, the linguistic wrecking ball.
Exactly. So how can you then use that very wrecking ball to establish a new, definitive certainty, the certainty that we know nothing?
I see. It's a performative contradiction.
Precisely. Molesworth calls it an unforgivable factuousism, a lie disguised as a fact, produced by the very system designed to expose such things. You built a shredder, Bunderbrook. You can't frame the last piece of confetti that comes out and call it the ultimate truth.
So the conclusion, we know nothing, has to be fed back into the shredder, too.
That's Molesworth's argument. It must be subjected to the same dislunting gate analysis, the same disruptive process. The shredding can never stop.
Okay, so how does Molesworth propose to fix this? What's his alternative?
He introduces the Molesworthian higher order obnubilatum. Lovely,
Yeah,
right?
more complicated.
It is. He brings in this concept of ultrasolipsometry. He argues the Gongoricalubrications style isn't a static tool that produces a final result, like Bunderbrook thinks. Instead, it's a thermomolecular process. It's dynamic, ongoing. You can't just stop it when you get an answer you like.
A process, not a result.
Exactly. He even cites some obscure figure Arnold Pittles, apparently, arguing that the whole thing has to be seen as a diakis-dodecahedral circuit, a perpetual loop, perendinational recursion.
Okay, so recursion. Bunderbrook's endpoint in essence, we know nothing, isn't the end for Molesworth. It's just the next input.
Precisely. It feeds back into the system. Bunderbrook wants philosophical closure. Molesworth insists on philosophical perpetual motion. The machine must keep running.
So what's Molesworth's actual conclusion, then, if it's not, we know nothing?
His conclusion is non-nascence.
Non-nascence, not knowing nothing, so...
No, it's something. Not quite. It's more subtle. The true function of the system, for Molesworth, is to ensure that every conclusion, including we know nothing, is just a prompt for the next cycle. The lacuna, the gap in knowledge, isn't a final state. It's what keeps the process going.
So the point is that we can't even be sure about our own ignorance.
Exactly. Molesworth's final position is a recursive, unenubilable confirmation that even the boundaries of ignorance are opaque. In simpler terms, we simply do not know that we do not know. The complexity has to be self-sustaining. It's about the endless process, not a destination.
Okay. That's dizzying. But it does seem more consistent with the tool they build, maybe.
Perhaps. But this is where the philosophical debate really goes off the rails. Because Molesworth doesn't just make these intellectual points in obnubial aggregationisms. He goes for the throat, the vituperative detail.
Ah, the personal attack.
Oh, yeah. Full-on character assassination. He calls Bunderbrook a dandy prat. Remember that one?
The insignificant person.
Right. Also a philosophical nincompoop, a fopdoodle.
Fopdoodle. Where does he get these?
Who knows? But he accuses Bunderbrook of, quote, crapulence of methodology.
Crapulence. That's a fantastic way to say his methods are garbage.
Isn't it? But it's the specific examples of this crapulence that are just bizarre. This is where the personal stuff really bleeds through.
Okay, what are the examples? This is where the groceries come in, right?
Yes. Molesworth actually lists, in this high-flown philosophical rebuttal, Bunderbrook's alleged failures in the lab. He accuses Bunderbrook of confusing chiral geometry that's like molecular handedness with a pineapple.
With a pineapple? How? Why? How does that relate to nescience versus non-nescience?
It doesn't. Not directly. He also claims Bunderbrook tried to measure raspberry particulate density using a spectrofluorometer.
What's that even for?
It measures light emission.
Okay.
Fluorescence. Molesworth is basically yelling, "You wasted expensive lab time trying to count raspberry seeds with a light meter, you idiot."
This is incredible. And the stake!
The piece de resistance. Molesworth alleges Bunderbrook attempted to measure magnetor resistance, a quantum effect related to magnetic fields and electrical resistance on a beef fillet.
On a stake? Why would anyone do that?
Yeah.
Was Bunderbrook trying to prove stakes are quantum devices?
Who knows? Molesworth's stated point is that these fundamental, almost comical errors show Bunderbrook doesn't grasp the seriousness of the philosophical endeavor, that the process requires rigorous handling, the intrapoetical deployment of the fardel, as he puts it.
The meaningful burden. Right.
But Molesworth argues Bunderbrook's focus on the end result in science, and these basic mistakes reveal he's just not up to the task. Essentially, Molesworth is saying the philosophical disagreement is secondary. The real issue is that Bunderbrook is incompetent, maybe even financially irresponsible with lab resources. Or maybe other resources, too.
The sheer level of personal vitriol here, focused on fruit and meat, it's totally out of whack with the supposed philosophical stakes. It screams that something else is going on.
Absolutely. How would Molesworth even know about the spectrofluorometer and the beef fillet unless they were working much more closely or sharing resources or something? It suggests a relationship far beyond simple academic rivals.
Okay, this is the perfect transition. The vitriol, the raspberries, the steak. Why? The answer, apparently, involves a pop star. This is where it gets really interesting. Right, part 3. The meta-kitsch reality, as the outline calls it. This is where our third source, the documentary, comes in and blows the whole thing wide open. It suggests this entire epic academic battle, this wiffle-waffle of jargon.
Wiffle-waffle, nice.
It's just a smokescreen, a high-volume foofara designed to hide a much simpler, much messier reality. A scandal involving money, a lot of money, and a love triangle.
Exactly. The documentary reveals the entire conflict actually revolves around one person, Freaky Featherweather.
Freaky Featherweather, who's apparently the queen of pseudopop.
Pseudopop, yes. And the core issue, a disastrous joint investment the two professors made in her latest venture, a line of perendinational NFTs.
Perendinational NFTs, of course, built to last. Or perpetually delay value.
Perhaps the latter. Because the catastrophe is simple. Their joint investment account is suddenly, mysteriously, $800,000 lighter.
$800,000. Ouch! What happened?
Freaky Featherweather happened. She apparently absquatulated.
Absquatulated. Ran off quickly.
Yep. Took the master NFT key, drained the funds. The documentary paints her as having this incredible flair for the metachitskiality of betrayal.
Metachitskiality of betrayal. So she understood their academic niche-making trash looked profound and used it against them.
That seems to be the angle. The source suggests her pitch was incredibly meta. She basically told them, "You guys study how complexity masks triviality. Investing in my inherently overvalued kitschy digital art NFTs is the ultimate philosophical statement. You'll be living your research and getting rich."
And they bought it.
Hook, line, and sinker. They thought they were participating in a profound metakish artistic philosophical financial experiment. Turns out they were just getting scammed.
Okay, this changes everything. We have to go back and reinterpret the philosophical arguments now through this lens of $800,000 and a pop star scam. Let's start with decoding Bunderbrook's nescience.
Right. So Bunderbrook's grand conclusion, terminal knee science, we know nothing, suddenly looks very different. It's not some universal philosophical truth he discovered.
It's personal.
Deeply personal. It's the academic cry of a man whose entire intellectual framework just got shattered by a real-world encounter with Freaky Featherweather and her crypto scheme.
So when he writes, "We demonstrably know nothing," he's really saying?
He's saying, my complex system gave me zero defense against this. I clearly know nothing about women. I definitely know nothing about what Freaky Featherweather was really thinking. And now, thanks to my intellectual hubris, I have $0.
Wow. The dense jargon, the cacophonodiscalational tongue twisters. It's just the academic equivalent of him screaming into his pillow, processing personal humiliation by making it sound like a profound philosophical dead end.
Pretty much. The sheer volume of obfuscation in his paper makes sense now as the output of a man whose stomach is in knots. Those collywobbles, the source mentions, hiding this deep anxiety beneath the supposed certainty of the lacuna, the gap in knowledge. He retreated philosophically because he was devastated personally and financially.
Okay, that's Bunderbrook's essence decoded. Now what about Molesworth's lacuna? He was obsessed with Bunderbrook creating this unforgivable philosophical gap by declaring certainty.
Yeah, that lacuna, that unforgivable philosophical sin.
It's the $800,000 hole in their bank account.
Bingo. That's the primary, unforgivable gap Molesworth is actually furious about. Bunderbrook's intellectual collapse is bad, but the real crime is that Bunderbrook's public display of pathetic, heartbroken essence makes Molesworth look bad too.
Why? Because they were partners in this.
Exactly. Molesworth looks guilty by association. He trusted this guy, this supposed intellectual giant, who apparently couldn't tell a pineapple from chiral geometry, and now they're both broke. Molesworth desperately wants to present a united front, a guerrilla vituperation, an aggressive defense against featherweather. But Bunderbrook's too busy wallowing in his philosophical misery, effectively confessing their shared failure through his paper.
So Molesworth's obsession with terminal nescience isn't really about the philosophical inconsistency. It's about Bunderbrook's intellectual meltdown, exposing their joint financial meltdown.
Right. Molesworth probably thought his own system, his ultra-solipsometry, made him intellectually superior, immune to Featherweather's charms. But he got played just as hard. He's furious. Bunderbrook isn't helping him cover it up better.
And what about Molesworth's complex arguments? The diacosdodecahedral circuit, the perendinational recursion.
According to the documentary, that's not philosophy at all. It's the legal strategy he's building.
Legal strategy.
Yeah. He's trying to construct a complex, roundabout argument to sue Bunderbrook in circuit court. He wants to use their own jargon to prove Bunderbrook was the financially incompetent one, the habitudist, the dullard who failed the Molesworthian mandate to manage the investment properly, making Bunderbrook solely responsible for the $800,000 loss.
So Molesworth's entire paper, Obnubile Aggregationisms, is basically one long, jargon-filled legal threat designed to shift blame and hide his own role in signing off on the investment.
That's what the third source strongly implies. The title itself, Obnubile Aggregationisms, is perfect. A giant, confusing pile of noise aggregated specifically to hide the simple, embarrassing fact that he got scammed too.
And the final scandalous truth connecting all this.
The simplest, most classic motive. Freaky Featherweather was apparently dating both professors simultaneously.
No, seriously.
That's the claim. She played on their intense academic rivalry, knowing they were so wrapped up in their intellectual posturing that, aesthetic of metasentia, they'd never communicate about something as mundane as who they were seeing or the details of their joint finances.
So she used their egos and their retirement fund
to launch her next venture, which, according to the source, is a line of Vestigabiotic vegan energy drink.
Vestigabiotic vegan energy drinks, funded by $800,000, scammed from two philosophy professors arguing about nescience. It's almost performance art.
It really is. She turned their obsession with masking triviality with complexity into funding for the ultimate trivial product, the metaconsciality of betrayal indeed.
So the academic rivalry we see in the papers now isn't about philosophy at all. It's just wounded male ego, financial desperation, and the need to maintain this aggressive intellectual front, the guerrilla vituperation, so the rest of the academic world thinks they're debating profundity, not fighting over who gets sued for the money lost to a pop star.
They weaponized Gongoricalubrications one last time as a smokescreen for a deeply humiliating personal and financial failure.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? When the language is designed to create gaps, to maximize that intercollegiality, maybe the simplest, most basic explanation, money, love, ego, rivalry, is the only clear thing left, the only truly pellucid perendination available.
It certainly seems that way in this case.
Yeah.
The real truth turned out to be the most trivial, hidden under the most complex facade imaginable.
Okay, so part 4. Let's synthesize this. We've seen the philosophy, we've seen the scandal. Now, putting it together, we can really appreciate the dual interpretation of jargon. Every key term these guys used has layers now.
Absolutely. They operate on two levels simultaneously. The high-flown philosophical level and the messy, embarrassing real-world level.
Let's take factuousism again. Academically, Molesworth uses it to mean Bunderbrook's sin of declaring certainty, we know nothing, using a system built to destroy certainty.
Right. But in the real-world context revealed by the documentary, Factuousism is basically Molesworth calling Bunderbrook a financial moron for trusting Featherweather and signing the NFT contract. Or maybe it's Bunderbrook's public lie, that his research just naturally led to nescience, rather than admitting his heart was broken and his bank account empty.
Okay, what about Molesworth's title? Obnubile aggregationisms. Academically, it refers to the complex aggregation of confusing elements in Bunderbrook's work, built from those three lexical registers.
Yeah. But the real-world meaning, it's just Molesworth creating his own confusing pile of noise, aggregated specifically to hide the fact that he also signed the check, he also got fooled, and he desperately wants to obscure his own part in the $800,000 disaster.
It's self-description disguised as critique.
Yeah.
And Hebetudist, the philosophical dullard.
In reality, that's just Molesworth deploying the most verbose academic-sounding insult possible to call Bunderbrook a clueless idiot who didn't read the fine print on the scam investment. It's an $800,000 insult wrapped in jargon.
So the entire Gongoricalubrications project, both Bunderbrook's paper and Molesworth's response, becomes the ultimate example of the aesthetic of metasentia.
Exactly. These documents, when you strip away the secret context, look profoundly important. They seem dense, challenging, potentially revolutionary. They achieve this undeniable appearance of wisdom, even though their actual core meaning, in philosophical terms, is arguably non-existent, or at best, deeply compromised.
And that appearance is the whole point, isn't it? It works perfectly as a defense mechanism. They took a utterly mundane, embarrassing failure, bad relationship choices, terrible financial decisions, and spun it into this monumental philosophical debate about the limits of human knowledge.
It allows them, and maybe the wider academic community that reads this stuff, to focus on the impressive, complex surface, the profligate, pugnacious science, maybe and completely ignore the chaotic secret mess underneath. The hugger-mugger of the love triangle and the theft.
So for you listening, what's the takeaway? When you encounter incredibly dense jargon or arguments that seem deliberately designed to exclude you, what does this story teach us?
Well, I think Gongoricalubrications is a powerful, if extreme, example of how language can be used not just to communicate, but to fabricate profundity. And, maybe more importantly, how it can be used to mask something much simpler, much more trivial, or, in this case, outright theft and personal failure.
So if something feels impenetrably complex, maybe ask, is this genuinely deep, or is it hiding something shallow?
Right. And it also reminds us that sometimes the biggest intellectual battles, the ones fought with the most complex weapons and the most arcane terminology, can actually hinge on the most basic human stuff. Greed, jealousy, ego, getting dumped, losing money. The simpler the underlying truth, perhaps the more elaborate the intellectual cover-up needs to be.
So where did we end up? We started deep in the weeds of pugnacitarious neologisms, trying to parse the difference between Bunderbrook's terminal nescience and Molesworth's recursive non-nescience. And we somehow navigated our way through obscure terminology, philosophical circuits, phantom geometers named Arnold Pittles.
Spectrophotometers measuring raspberries, magnets attacking beef fillets.
Only to land squarely in the middle of a pop star love triangle, an $800,000 NFT scam, and the launch of Vestigabiotic vegan energy drinks.
The journey from the absolute pinnacle of obfuscated philosophy to the absolute baseline of tabloid fodder is complete.
It really is an incredible case study, isn't it? How academic disputes can become these containers for unresolved personal drama. The tragedy, maybe, is that these professors genuinely seem to believe their complex intellectual systems somehow made them immune to basic human foolishness.
They mistook linguistic complexity for real-world insulation. They thought their mastery of obnubile aggregationisms protected them from, well, freaky featherweather. They were wrong.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you to chew on. Freaky Featherweather didn't just scam them. She did it by using their own academic specialty metakitschality against them.
Right. She played their game better than they did.
So, if metakitschality is the art of making something trashy seem profound or turning trash into art, and if these professors' papers are ultimately just incredibly high-volume, foo-for-raw, intellectual kitsch masking a simple, messy hugger-mugger,
then what does that make the third source? The documentary. The expose that lays bare the whole scam, the love triangle, the energy drinks with brutal clarity.
Does the expose, by revealing the true structure of the metakitsch betrayal and its mundane outcome, ironically become the ultimate, most honest expression of Mukopolis University's academic focus? Is the scandal itself the real masterpiece of Gongoricalubrications?
Perhaps the highest form of metakitschality isn't the deliberately obscure paper, but the simple, tawdry truth it tried so desperately to hide.
Something to think about anyway, especially the next time you find yourself reading an academic text that requires you to understand a diastodecahedral circuit just to figure out what it's saying about, in iguanas.